Good morning. Welcome to episode 2 of Other Stages. My guests today are Sadie Bowman and Ricky Coates of Matheater. So let me ask you something. Do you like math? Or do you cringe at the mere mention of math? Is math your best friend or your biggest enemy? Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and be sure to like and comment on today's show. Now, when I was a kid, everyone around me kept telling me, "Ooh, math is hard, math is hard, math is hard." And like most kids, I took their repetitions to heart. And I became quite fearful of math. Then in the 6th grade, we started learning about fractions. And even my teachers were repeating the mantra, "Fractions are hard, fractions are hard, fractions are hard." I was in college before I realized that I had been doing fractions since I was 5 years old. You see, note values in music are actually fractions. So as a musician, every day I'm doing fractions all day long. And now I've come to realize that, math is my friend, and I started really loving math. So, to start off today's show, of course, I want to do some music for you. And we're going to do something from a collection called The Little Preludes and Fugues by Johann Sebastian Bach. Now, these pieces are often thought of more as student pieces rather than concert pieces. And there's a bunch of musicologists out there who are arguing that Bach didn't write these. And I remember I played a couple of these at a recent concert, and somebody came up to me afterwards, "You can't attribute that to Bach." And I'm like, "Well, do you know who did write it instead?" And so, anyway. But I think these pieces are fun. They're short, they're sweet, they're nice to listen to. So we'll start with, from the 8 Little Preludes and Fugues by Bach, with the one in F major. It was at the 2006 Minnesota Fringe Festival that Sadie Bowman and Mark Gutman premiered a highly unlikely smash hit, Calculus, the musical. It was the product of a very funny math teacher and a smart comedian, and it struck a resounding chord in the education world. Bowman and Gutman toured an early version of the show at schools throughout the US and Canada, and then Matheater of Cincinnati produced an 8-year tour with their own actors. In 2016, Bowman and Gutman were joined by actor, writer, and one-time astrophysics major Ricky Coates to reboot the now classic Calculus musical, and in this configuration, Matheater continues to grow. Today, Matheater is a 501c3 entity with international reach. Bowman and Coates tour 4 full-time, full-scale productions that promote scientific literacy and intellectual curiosity. Mark Gutman and Rosalie Norris Gutman provide administrative support and music production from their home base in Minneapolis. Matheater works with museums and science centers, libraries, high schools, and colleges. They offer workshops to educators and science communicators and are producing a dramatized nonfiction podcast about math and science history. I actually met Sadie and Ricky on the festival circuit. They are smart and charming, and a few days ago I sat down with Sadie and Ricky via video chat. Now, we used Facebook Messenger to make this connection, and unfortunately, because of the way they placed my image into the screen, Ricky gets cut off a little bit. There was nothing I could do about it, so we just continued with the interview. Here is my talk with Sadie and Ricky a few days ago. Well, this morning my guests are Sadie Bowman and Ricky Coates, and they are from Matheater. Hi, you guys.
Hey, Tony.
Hello, Tony.
Thank you for doing this. It's been great to know you guys for a while now and have you on the show here.
Yeah,
so why don't we start out, let's have each of you tell us a little bit about who you are, you know, what you grew up with, all that kind of stuff, and maybe what led you up to this point in life.
Whew, how much time do we have? I'll go ahead and go first. I'm Sadie. Good to see you. Happy New Year. I am the co-founder and co-artistic director and managing director of Matheater. We use live theater to tell stories that inspire excitement about math and science. Now, Sadie Bowman, how the heck did you get into this line of work? You're not a mathematician. So it's been kind of an interesting wiggling line for me to find myself in the role of being a science communicator. And I find it a very rewarding place to be because I love science. I appreciate math. I think these are amazing things. I'm not necessarily good at doing them, but I really like that I can use the things that I am good at, which is music, comedy, theater, to inspire people to think about math and science in creative ways, to recognize why math and science are important, and to encourage people who do have the aptitude and maybe are interested and curious to keep following it and see what they can do. I grew up, my family is really musical, so I grew up taking piano lessons, and I was a dancer when I was a kid, and then I got into comedy after college, and that kind of led me through varying iterations of my career. I met Tony and the fine people of Fresno, California, because I was touring a show called The Famous Haydell Sisters Comeback Tour, which we did in the Rogue Festival in 2014, 2015.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, back now. So the stuff that I have done has ranged all over the gamut of comedy and music, and I co-founded Matheater with a friend of mine named Mark Gutman, who is a math teacher. Okay. And he had started writing parody songs to help his students remember formulas. Okay. And this was back in 2005, 2006. And so he was finding that his students were really, really engaging with music as they were learning higher math. And so kind of as a joke, I was like, oh, you have all these songs that you have, these parody songs that you've made. We should put them together and make them into a musical so that adults can kind of understand what calculus is and what it's for. And I was kind of joking, but the idea sort of stuck and took off, and long story short, here we are.
All right.
All right, so my name's Ricky, and I am also the co-artistic director of Matheater with Sadie here. I grew up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and kind of traveled around the world finding where I wanted to live, and I settled on Seattle, Washington for about 12 years, which is, so the route that I took was that when I was for most of my childhood, I was really into science and the theater, so I would take, I was really into science classes, but I would also be in the community plays. And so when I was looking at colleges, I wanted to double major in astrophysics and theater. And so I went to the University of Arizona, started with both, learned that while I was really good at physics, I didn't want to wake up every morning and do it. But I also auditioned into their competitive BFA program for acting. So I dropped my double major and I went straight for acting. But science was still always a big passion of mine. So fast forward through all the places that I lived into Seattle, where I was doing a lot of acting, and I started doing my own theater and going to fringe festivals, thanks to a company named Theater Simple. They introduced me to fringe festivals, and so I was like, I want to be doing this. So that's where I met Sadie, I was touring a one-man zombie play. And I met her because we were in the same venue with her and Donna doing the famous Haydel Sisters. And at that point, I had been working on a one-man play about Nikola Tesla, which coincidentally, you might, the person who got me involved with that was I was over at Grant Knutson's house for a fundraiser.
Okay.
And people in Fresno know Grant Knutson.
That's right.
Yeah, and Heather. Okay, and Heather. So Heather was the one that brought me. She was like, Ricky, when are you doing a show about Nikola Tesla? I said, Heather, why would I do that? She brought me a book. She said, look, it's you with a mustache. And so the summer that I met Sadie, I was reading about Tesla, and I was like, yes, I have to do a show about this guy. His work and his life was just so influential and just ripe for story. And so after Sadie and I became friends and more, I was telling her that I wanted to take this show and I wanted to tour it. And she said, well, I have this show called Calculus the Musical. Do you want to go on the road with me? And so that was kind of the beginning of how I got roped in. Yeah. What's your version?
No, it's similar to that. I think originally we were going to take over the tour temporarily because at the time, so Calculus the Musical has also had a long trajectory of development and changes. We had licensed it to a regional theater in Ohio. No Theater of Cincinnati was producing a national tour, and they were that year they were just strapped for actors. Basically, they hadn't been able to cast it, and I was like, oh, what if we just went out and did it for 8 weeks? That was the original idea. And then it turned out that it was a good time to sort of change hands of the rights again and take the rights back. And then it snowballed.
Yeah. Wow.
For sure.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Ricky, I got to show you this.
Yeah.
It's a Nikola Tesla votive candle. Well, let's talk about a little bit more about your shows. Now, the one that I got to see was Curing Me Away, and that was really cool because I think one of the neglected things in the world of science is women in science. and women in the past especially frequently got overshadowed by the men around them. So tell us a little about the creation and thought process behind Curing Me Away.
Yeah, so that is our chemistry themed musical based on the science and life of Marie Curie.
Hmm.
And we got the idea to do it specifically for the reason that you said. You know, we've been doing Tesla, which is about Tesla, Calculus the musical. The version we've been doing is mostly about Isaac Newton. We wanted something that very intentionally had a female protagonist. So at first I had sort of rejected Marie Curie because I'm like, everybody knows Marie Curie. Let's find somebody who's like a little even less recognized, right? But I started reading about her, and her biography is just so incredible, and she is just such an inspiring figure on so many levels that I'm like, oh no, this is it. What's one thing that we try to do in all of our shows is use science to tell a story or to complement a story. So we try to work a lot of science in as metaphors that further the human story. So for this one, we wanted it to be useful to students of chemistry. So we spent a lot of time. I checked out a stack of library books, like the of high school level chemistry, and I just gave myself a crash course in high school chemistry. And we consulted with Ricky's sister, Dr. Becky Coates, who is actually a PhD in physical chemistry. And so she was an instrumental consultant for us. So we really tried to use chemistry processes and chemistry themes to tell the story of Marie Curie. So for instance, when she is if you're going to play that clip, I'm going to already say this, but we talk about chemical compounds to talk about this feeling of being alone and not having anything to react with. We talk about transmutation as like aging and getting old and transforming from one stage of your life to the next. So that's Curing Me Away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's insert that clip right here.
In ancient times, ancient men thought our world was simple then. 4 elements everywhere, just fire, water, earth, and air. In a man's world and a Russian nation, I'm a Polish girl in isolation.
Zazatua de Fel, surely you know it well.
Really, I'm here to learn about atoms and shells. Could these be the elements of a dream? They glow with a glorious, impossible gleam. The world has an order and physics obey, but curious dreams carry me.
So that's only one of 4 of the shows that you list on your website currently. And Ricky, you're doing the Tesla show, and you told us a little bit about that. What is kind of the meat of the matter? You know, when you're looking at Tesla, are you looking, trying to reveal more of what he did, or something about his personal life, or?
So as far as the Tesla show goes, we're actually rewriting that this winter so that it can be a 2-person musical, because at the present moment it's a 1-person drama, right?
Okay.
So it kind of stands alone in our catalog of musicals, 2-person musicals. And Sadie is just such a genius songwriter that I'm like, let's fold him in. But as far as Tesla goes, I use the metaphor of electromagnetism to tell his story.
Okay.
Right. So I start with the idea of him looking, because that was the time that they had just started converting magnetism into electricity, right? Like you had the crank dynamos, and so this was a very burgeoning time for electricity. So that his story parallels the story, like the route that we took to get electricity into our homes. And if it wasn't for Tesla, then we wouldn't have AC in our homes, right?
That's right.
Because he was the one who came up with the alternating current motor. It's very easy to convert power into direct current, right? You have your spinning your spinning conductor between two magnets. You have a commutator that converts it so that it travels in one direction, and one directional electricity is very easy to power a motor, right? Because the motor spins in one direction, so you can just take that electricity, magnetize the motor, and it spins in one direction. But when you have alternating current, your electricity is going back and forth, which when you have a conductor rotating a magnet, that's what it's doing, is it's naturally making alternating current. And so like you were saying, alternating current is great for a power grid, because that's how electricity is naturally made in a spinning conductor. And so you can convert it to high voltages. You can then convert it back down to low voltages. You can send it, hundreds of miles away. So even before Tesla came along, people knew that alternating current was superior to direct current. But like you said, until it could spin a motor, it really had no use other than powering a light bulb, because light bulbs don't really care what direction.
Right.
As he grew older, and especially after the attacks by Edison and after Marconi, basically, because Marconi used his patents in order to make the radio, and even though Tesla won that Supreme Court battle for those patents years and years later, he just was so ground into the dirt that he became very protective. Yeah. And he also had some mental issues, right? So people think of him as this mad scientist. But when I was reading the book, what struck me was that people said that he reminded them of a magician. He was a very personable person, and so people would flock to see Nikola Tesla's electric demonstrations, not because there was this mad scientist just like in the corner, but because he was there and he was personable and he was courting all the money, the financially wealthy people, but also just putting on a good show. People would invite him over to parties because he was a wonderful person to sit and have a conversation with. And so I feel like that version of Nikola Tesla gets lost so much.
Wow.
And
That's
so
good.
he comes across to me as a perfect person to put on stage, because he's this immigrant who changed America, and he's the kind of person that people fell in love with and wanted to be on their side. And he's the proverbial underdog, and who doesn't like the story of an underdog?
That's for sure. Now, one of the shows I don't know anything about, but I am particularly fascinated with, it's on your website, Voyagers.
So Voyagers is our musical grand tour of the solar system. It is a full-length musical based on NASA's Voyager mission. It tracks sort of the trajectory of the careers of sort of some fictionalized, it was amazing because we actually got to interview some of the NASA scientists who actually worked on the mission, including Dr. Linda Spilker, who is just an awesome person, and Dr. Candace Hansen, who took the photograph known as the pale blue dot, where it's, looking back to get sort of the family portrait of all the planets in the solar system. So we got to talk to these people and get their stories and get their perspectives and their memories of working on this amazing mission. And the Voyager mission, for those who don't know, it launched in 1977, and it's 2 space probes that went to boldly go where no craft had gone before, to the outer planets of our solar system. So they did flybys of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And especially Uranus and Neptune, this was literally the first time we got to see, humanity, got see these planets. Like, we didn't know anything.
Had no idea.
No idea.
And we've seen them as little dots in telescopes, right?
Yeah, it is.
And we haven't been back since. So any photograph that you have ever seen of Uranus and Neptune, that was from the Voyager mission. So our show, we sort of, because it was really challenging to tell the story because there is not one protagonist, right? It's just a team of hundreds of people over the course of decades who made and are still making this mission happen. So how do you tell a story with that many protagonists, right? So what we did was we took the stories from the people that we interviewed and we used them to inform 4 fictionalized characters of scientists that were working on the mission. So there's the mission director, there's an instrument representative, so the person who's controlling the measurement devices and all of that. There's the planetary scientist and the fault engineer, who's in charge of keeping things flying even when things go wrong. So the story tracks the 12 years from launch until leaving Neptune. And so you're tracking sort of the human lifespan of what happens, because that's kind of a long time in the human span of time, 12 years. So you're tracking these people and their development and their growth and their careers. And then there's a parallel story where we completely anthropomorphize the spacecraft.
Oh, okay, cool.
We are
Love it.
telling the story of the Golden Record, which was installed. There's 2 copies on, one on each probe, and it's got basically Earth's greatest hits. So
Yes.
there's photographs of Earth, of different species on Earth. There's photographs of people, recordings of different natural sounds, industrial sounds, human sounds. There's music, and I'm sure, for those of you who are interested in music, you can easily find it, the whole playlist. It includes music from cultures all over the world. What else is on there? All kinds of things.
Yeah. This was developed by Andrian and Carl Sagan and Frank Drake and a team because these Voyagers left our solar system. They are going to travel in interplanetary space. So in the very minute chance that they were going to be picked up by another intelligent life form, we wanted to, this is our message to them. This is who made these craft.
And so these records will very likely definitely outlast humanity, very possibly outlast the physical existence of this planet itself. They're pretty much indestructible, and it might be billions of years in the future until anyone finds them, if ever. So it's very possible that these will be lasting echoes from this planet that once existed, and these species that once did our best
about these things.
Yeah, and to let them know that we were here and we were trying to reach them, right? Mm-hmm. That we were looking outward from our own world and wondered who was out there and just wanted to say hello.
The other amazing thing about our Voyager show is that it's not just the 2 of us on stage. We have partnered with Fisk Planetarium in Boulder, Colorado, and so this show is a live planetarium show. They have built a full dome projection. So every time we go to a planet, like in the planetarium, the planet is flying by. You're going to the moons. So
you go onto the surfaces of some of them. Yeah.
It is an immersive planetarium live musical theater experience.
Holy cow, I have to see this.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That sounds amazing.
Thank you. Yeah,
that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So now most of your shows, I know you do a lot of educational work.
Mm-hmm.
You're in classrooms and cafegimatoriums and that kind of thing. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into that market? Because it is a market.
It started with Calculus the Musical. Like I said, we started that show with my friend Mark back in 2006. We did it at the Minnesota Fringe Festival because it was the perfect opportunity to do a weird little show about calculus. And we initially planned to take it around to just some other festivals. So we kind of like embarked on a tour to take it to like, I don't remember, a bunch of festivals around North America that summer. And it took like zero time until teachers started contacting us being like, can you do this for my students? This would be so much fun. So that was how we didn't initially imagine necessarily doing it at schools. But once we started doing it, we realized that there's a real need for this kind of approach, for this educational or this entertaining, low pressure, not at all serious, like fun approach to learning math. And it really resonated with teachers and it resonated with students. And at that time, this is, 15 years ago now, there was not, now in the past few years, there has been a very strong movement in science education called STEAM, which is, STEM,
right.
Science, technology, engineering, and math. And lately, STEM education has incorporated STEAM, which adds letter A for art. So using art to engage with STEM is recently a movement that is really taking off in education. But back then, that didn't even exist yet. So everybody was like, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. Like, what are you, what? I gotta see this. You are coming to my school and we're gonna see what this is, because this is insane. So it's been really interesting to be, doing this off and on in various ways for the last 15 years, because the conversation has completely changed. Because back then it was like they thought we were crazy, and maybe they would say something about like, oh, the connection of music and math, and we're like, yeah, that's totally a thing. Not what the show's about. But that was the only way they could justify this idea, right? And now it's like it's like there are like STEAM coordinators in school districts, and it's like a total like legitimized, recognized mode of education, and I think that is amazing.
The teachers we most remember,
Mm-hmm.
the ones we learned the most from, were the ones that were the most entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea of deriding entertainment in the classroom is foolish.
There's a big difference between, I think, people who don't really know, they imagine it's like putting on a movie so you don't have to give a lecture that day.
Right.
Right? It's just like, it's like a babysitter kind of thing.
Right.
And there's a big difference between that and using a movie to frame these concepts, these big picture concepts that you're learning about and exploring as young people, and having that piece of art that you can connect these concepts to in a very personal and human way that touches you, because that's what art is.
I should have booked you guys for like 2 episodes.
I know.
I may end up doing that anyway, because wow, we've really had a marvelous conversation here, and we haven't even touched on everything. and I really want to maybe have you guys back and we can talk a little more about women in science, because you've got a new show that you're working on about Rosalind Franklin.
Yeah.
So why don't you just quickly give us a little pitch for that, and I'll be sure to put up a link to anything you have online that talks about that.
Yeah, so our latest thing that we've released is we're again branching out into a new medium, and we're doing a podcast. It's called History Science Theater Podcast, and it's audio drama that uses it's a musical audio drama that tells stories from science history. So season 1 is based on the career of Rosalind Franklin, who was a British chemist and X-ray crystallographer. She took the photograph that provided the data that illuminated the structure of DNA. And she is very famous for being basically jilted by Watson and Crick, who are credited with being the fathers of DNA, and they very famously left her out completely when they won the Nobel Prize, did not acknowledge her contributions. Big thing. So she's recently kind of become sort of this feminist icon of just sort of emblematic of these women who do the work, who make these major contributions, but get completely overlooked.
Yep.
And while I think that is absolutely true, and I want more people to know about her story and to recognize her contributions, I also think that we need to know more about her story, right? Because she's known as this victim, and her career, like, she did so, like, not only did she provide this amazing insight into the structure of life, she made major discoveries in the realms of carbons, just learning how different ways that coal behaves, and really important discoveries in chemistry. She also was contributed to the mapping the first time a virus was mapped, its structure was mapped. So just an amazing amount of influence that she has had. And so she's the topic of our first season of our podcast. And it's a musical, and I had some amazing help writing the music for this piece. Tony teaches music theory lessons, and so just putting that out there.
Look, I pointed you in the right direction, and that was about it. Okay, you took it from there.
Chords now, and my life will never it's changed the way I write music. But you can find that podcast anywhere you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Podbean, all the cool places. It's called History Science Theater Podcast.
And I love the name. That's awesome. Thank you both for being here today. And I'm honestly, I got to have you back again real soon, and so we'll work that into the schedule.
Yeah.
So, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
We'll see you guys next time.
Take care, everybody.
So really, I could talk to them all day anyway, because we both love science and space stuff. So I'm always up for that. Now, as always, I've left the links to the Matheater website and the Matheater Facebook page. And from there, you can get to their podcast. You can see more information about their shows. And I just think they're doing something truly unique and wonderful. And hats off. It's beautiful. So for my next musical selection for today's show, I picked one of my own pieces. This is called In Flight. And this piece kind of came about. My wife and I were watching a movie, and there was a scene that involved someone flying. And the film score composer did a beautiful, beautiful job with it. But it kind of hit in my mind, if I were given that task, how would I have scored that scene? So this is called In Flight, and it's part of my ambient organ music collection. And I'm using some various reverb and delay effects along with my looper to achieve a unique soundscape. So, what would you do if money were no object? On today's show, we met a couple who had a dream and they found a way. And in future episodes, we're going to meet all kinds of people who had a dream and found a way to live that dream. So, what's your dream? I've had many dreams in my 5.5 decades, and nearly all went unfulfilled for one reason. I didn't have the money. I remember a family dinner when I was in my 20s. My parents, my brother, and I were all in between jobs. We were at the table and we were talking about this job and that job and all of that. And I suddenly had what I thought was the answer. See, my dad is a trained chef. In fact, he studied at the California Culinary Institute. My mother has extensive management experience. My brother had just completed his bartending certification. And of course, I was a professional musician with both nightclub and restaurant experience. So I blurted out, "Hey, we should open a restaurant." Well, no sooner did those words pop out of my mouth that all three of them came down on me like a ton of bricks and spelled out all the reasons why it couldn't possibly be done. All of their protestations were based on money. You had to have money for this, you had to have money for that. This money first attitude was nothing new to me. My family is very fond of proselytizing what they would do if. And all of those what if dreams were, what if I had the money? The money first philosophy is the perfect self-saboteur. With it, we can postpone anything indefinitely. I've spent the better part of my life stuck in an endless cycle of if only, if only. Yes, most ventures do require some money. And there are, of course, social and economic barriers that can be formidable. But the simple fact that you don't have all the money up front is not a reason to give up on our dreams. As a teenager, I hadn't quite fully absorbed this whole money first philosophy. And so when I decided I wanted to be an organist, nothing was going to stop me. My parents had this grocery list of why they didn't want me to be an organist, and well, that's a collection of stories in and of themselves. But thanks to the fact that I had the moxie to go after what I wanted, in spite of not having any money, I found a way. See, I found a music store that sold organs and, of course, was staffed by organists, and I agreed to be their janitor in exchange for lessons and a place to practice. I courted my grandfather's interest in my organ playing, and he bought me my first instrument. Now, let's be honest, those same tactics worked beautifully when I was a kid, but they're not going to work so good now that I'm an adult. On top of that, as I grew up, cynicism and the hard knocks of life took their toll on my personal philosophy, and I became fully immersed into the money first mentality. For the next 25 years, I was stuck. Getting unstuck, well, that took a lot of time, and honestly, it just kind of happened. At some point, instead of constantly lamenting, "How?" I started saying, "Why not?" Along the way, instead of getting bogged down in money issues, I started searching for options. And I discovered that when I did need money, with a little research, I didn't need as much money as I thought. And sometimes I didn't need any money at all. So I started doing new things. In 2007, I did a comedy show for the very first time, and it went pretty well. I started doing more shows and concerts, and I found out that there are these things called festivals that are relatively inexpensive and relatively easy to get into. At the festivals, I met a lot of other performers who were finding a way to live their dream, and they were often forthcoming and with help and advice. One performer friend of mine told me that I should include my organ playing in my live stage shows. Well, I had no idea how I could possibly do that, but I said yes, and I'm finding a way. Never before in history has the world been more accessible or more friendly to niche. Yeah, the big corporate players in the entertainment industry are always going to dominate the market, and they're always going to find a way to suck up most of the money. But there is one thing that they no longer possess, and that's the keys to the gate. The internet has democratized the entertainment game. Anyone can find a stage and an audience. So what's your dream? Is it some kind of performing arts, acting, writing? Or maybe it's a grand hobby like old cars or motorcycles. Well, I say go find a way, because you only live once. So let's return to a little music, one last piece, and again, this is from the 8 Little Preludes by Johann Sebastian Bach, and this is the one in C major. So that's the show for today. Thanks to Sadie and Ricky for being guests today. My guest next week is singer and music historian Melanie Gall, who has found a way to become an international singing star by doing some of the most unique music that she can find from days gone by. Gratuities for today's show can be left at Venmo or PayPal, and you can become a regular supporter at Patreon, where you will also get exclusive video content. All the links for that are in the show description, along with links to more information about Matheater. So thank you very, very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.